Omayra Sánchez was a 13-year-old girl living in a town called Armero in Colombia. She lived with her parents, her brother, and her aunt. On November the 13th, 1985, the Nevado del Ruiz erupted after 69 years of dormancy. This eruption caused a lahar. A lahar is a volcanically induced mudflow, landslide, or debris slide. On the night of the eruption, Omayra's mother had traveled out of town for business. The rest of the family were at home watching the ash fall from the eruption when they heard the sound of the approaching lahar. The lahar that was headed for Armero was traveling down the slopes at 30 miles an hour and quickly engulfed the entire town. After the lahar hit, Omayra found herself trapped under the concrete remains of her home and couldn't free herself. She reached her hand up through the debris and mud and was spotted by a team of rescuers who had rushed to the town to help anyone they could. They removed the debris from around her until she was freed from the waist up. All the meanwhile this rescue operation was taking place, a French photographer, Frank Fournier, was in the town photographing the destruction caused by the lahar. The photos that I'm going to show are some he took over the time he spent with her and the rescue team. Warning, they are quite graphic. When they tried to pull Omayra out of the debris, the water began to pool around her, getting higher and higher the more they pulled. They realized her legs must be pinned, and to avoid injuring her more, they stopped that approach while they brainstormed other rescue ideas. They put a tire around her so that the rest of her upper body could remain above the water and she could rest on something. They also laid a branch that she would use to hold herself up. For the next several hours, she remained positive, singing and chatting with the rescue team. She drank soda and asked only for sweet food and was in fairly good spirits. Omayra had been stuck now for 2 days, and on the 3rd day, the rescue team started to notice her health was beginning to decline. Her hands were turning paler, and her face was starting to swell. The team was still trying to figure out how to get her out without injuring her more, when Omayra started having hallucinations, saying she had to get to school, and she had to attend a maths exam. The rescue team was frantically looking for a pump or something to try to remove the water so that they could get a clearer image of what was going on underneath. When they returned, Omayra had grown weaker and was unable to support herself. They realized the only way that they would be able to free her would be to amputate both of her legs, but unfortunately, they didn't have the surgical equipment to do so. So the decision was made that the humane thing to do would be let Omayra die. Omayra knew her fate and told everyone that they didn't need to stay with her, but they did until the very end. Omayra passed away on the 16th of November 1985 after 60 hours trapped, likely due to hypothermia or gangrene. This was the final photo taken of her a few hours before she passed. By the time Frank got to Armero, she had already been trapped for 2 days, so the photos shown earlier were only from the 1 day he spent with her. Omayra's body was never removed, and where she died would be her final resting place. To remove Omayra's body, they would have had to dismember her, and Omayra's mother and brother did not want to put her spirit through that. When the water drained, they were able to see that not only were Omayra's legs pinned under concrete, but her auntie had grabbed a hold of her before passing away herself, so she had a death grip on her niece. Her aunt was not completely underneath the water or rubble, and she can be visibly seen in some of the photos. So the whole time Omayra was trapped, she was inches away from her deceased aunt. Omayra's father also passed away during the lahar, but her brother managed to survive. Following the tragedy, Omayra's mother spoke out, saying, "It is horrible, but we have to think about the living. I will live for my son, who only lost a finger." Frank Fournier received a lot of public backlash following his photos being published. Many people criticized how he could stand there and watch a 13-year-old girl die and do nothing to help her. His response was that there was nothing anybody could do. Everybody felt powerless, and all they could end up doing was comfort her. There was no resources, there was no organization, there was no help. Frank also stated, "I felt that the only thing I could do was to report properly and hope that it would mobilize people to help the ones that had been rescued and had been saved." The haunting last photo of Omayra Sánchez alive won Frank the 1986 World Press Photo of the Year. The next clips I'm going to show is the aftermath of the lahars. Warning again, these images are graphic. The lahar that destroyed Omayra's town killed roughly 20,000 of the 29,000 people living there, and other lahars caused by the same eruption took the lives of a further 5,000 people. This tragedy was one of the most deadly lahars on record, and many believe the significant loss of life could have been greatly decreased if the government had listened to warnings about the volcano given 2 months before the eruption, and if they had put evacuation and prevention plans in place. Along with frustration that the government never heeded the warnings of scientists before the eruption, there was outrage at the lack of the Colombian government's response after the eruption took place. None of Colombia's 100,000-person army or 65,000-member police force were dispatched to join the rescue efforts on the ground. However, regardless of who may or may not be at fault, the story of the brave young girl captivated the world, and the world mourned her loss. The town of Armero now remains a constant reminder of the ferocity of the Nevado del Ruiz. May Omayra and every other life lost rest in peace.